So, B3313 1.0. It should be the final version of the hack. If you don't know what it is, then I'm just going to point you to the 0.9 release video that I made last year, since it sums up everything pretty well. That one explains how to get the game running and everything. Just please don't ask me how to play it on anything other than a PC with Project 64, because I've not tried anything else, and I'm not really the one to ask. But since that video is for an older version, some of the details that I go over are a bit different now, or in some cases I now have some better understanding of how they work, and I'm going to get into some of these changes later. So, 1.0 has been out for a few days now. I haven't made a video on it yet, because I've basically just had to figure out how I want to approach this. With the 0.7 version, I went into the game completely blind. I just wandered around randomly and found stuff, and eventually decided that I was going to need to start mapping everything out, or otherwise I'd never see it all. So I did that, and eventually started looking at the wiki to fill in the things I missed, and covered the whole game that way. With 0.9, I got early access to an incomplete build that kept updating as I played it. I basically had to start all over again with the knowledge of the old version, but kept running into new areas, had to figure out how they fit in with everything I already knew. Updated my spreadsheet and stuff, and then after finishing my playthrough, I made some extra videos on it where I went into more detail on some specific stuff like the cap switches, the red stars. People seem to like those videos pretty well, and I enjoyed making them. But 1.0 is different because I was more directly involved with its development, and there's no way for me to actually play this blind. And that's generally the best way to enjoy this game, because the appeal is just never really knowing what's around the corner or how things work, like how many areas there are, what they're like, all that type of stuff. And I know all that now. Because I've already had to check out every area in the game when doing bug testing and setting all the star IDs. So if you don't know the full story, without me getting into any of the drama that was involved, basically Chris, the original dev who came up with the idea for the hack and had most of the ideas for it, he wanted to wrap up the project, but had to mostly do it on his own because there was a falling out with the other devs that were helping with it. And since I did so much documentation of the previous versions, he asked me if I wanted to help out, which I did. I think there were a few other people involved that helped make some of the new maps, but I don't really have any details on that specifically. To my knowledge, Chris pretty much made all of the updates between 0.9 and 1.0 on his own, aside from the stuff that I did, which was mostly just some cleanup. My main job when working with this was to assign unique IDs to every star in the game, which basically just meant I had to comb through every single map, which there's currently 388 of. I had to find every star and document them, just, make a list of everything. Once that was set up, then I had to go through them all again, start giving them all different IDs, to make sure that the game wouldn't have any duplicates again, since that was one of the biggest issues with the last release. Over half the stars in the game didn't really count towards completion. None of this was really hard work most of the time. Every once in a while something would pop up that was confusing, but it would always get sorted out. But it was mostly just tedious, and it required being really careful to document everything correctly so that we wouldn't find out later that I put in a wrong number somewhere and accidentally made a duplicate and messed everything up. So once all that was done, then I got to go through every map a third time, testing them out in-game to make sure that all the stars actually worked properly, which some didn't because I either put in a wrong number by mistake, or it didn't save, or something got changed without me knowing it, or whatever. So, had to go through all that, occasionally running into some bugs, some of which I would actually fix, some of which I would just report to get fixed later. And then after that would happen, I'd have to test it again and make sure that everything fit and keep the spreadsheet updated and everything. Just kind of had to really hope while doing this that, after I finished an area, it wouldn't get touched again later with new stuff popping up, because if that was the case, there was no way in hell I was going to go back and check every map again. So, just kind of hope for the best with that one. So, long story short, I know this game pretty intimately at this point, and so here's what I think I'm going to do. This video is just explaining the basics, sort of an overview. Then I'll be doing a series of videos where I show off all the brand new stuff, or anything that's gotten any significant changes. And after that, I'll probably just kind of hop around throughout various locations in the game and talk about all the places that I have some sort of story about. Like any weird bugs that came up, stars that got scrapped, just that sort of thing. And after that's done, I'll see if there's any other topics that are, worth being covered, and we'll go over those if there are any. Probably some basic stuff like the red stars again, and that sort of thing, but we'll see. So, let's finally talk about the game and what's changed since the last version. By my count, there's about 50 new maps that are, 50 maps that are either brand new or are heavily updated from the last version. About half of those are levels. Some are, pretty big ones with multiple stars. Some are really small, simple ones. There's a handful of new castle areas. A couple places that got completely redone, a few just short transitional maps, and of course there's some of those dead-end areas that just have some sort of spooky crap in them and then either kill you or crash the game, because you always gotta have a few of those. The game has 450 unique stars in it. The game will only correctly display 445 of them, though. In a 100% complete file, that is what it'll say you have, but the total is actually 450. Of the 450, 13 of them are red, and 13 of them are green, and the remaining 424 are all regular yellow stars. On top of that, there are some duplicates, but not as many as you might think. They're mostly just used in places that make sense, like if a level changes between two different states, like you have a grass version and a lava version, and there's a star in the same place in both, that's usually a duplicate. Originally, I did want to have a few more than that. I liked it when the game would kind of gaslight you by spawning a star that you are positive you've never collected, but it's transparent. Now, obviously, in the last version, we had like 200 of those, and it was just more annoying than anything else, but I felt like if there was like maybe 5 of them in the whole game, that would be kind of funny. But that ended up not happening. There's not really any of those. There's also about 8 or 9 troll stars, the ones that don't do anything when you collect them. They don't add to your total or stay collected or anything. These are all intentional. They're not in places where it's like, you complete an objective and then one shows up and it's like, haha, you wasted your time. Like, they're pretty well telegraphed. Most of them are also not actually collectible without doing some weird shit. So, as for the red stars, it's, basically the same as in 0.9. These are the ones that are mandatory for beating the game. 5 of them are from Bowser fights. Those are the ones that do not count towards the in-game total. It is kind of janky. It's just a holdover from how stuff worked in the last version, which was kind of janky. Again, it was basically just me and Chris. We didn't know how to fix it, so that's just kind of how it is. The other 8 red stars do count towards the total. Those are spread between some other bosses and just some hidden areas. There were like 10 other places that we wanted to put reds, but there just weren't enough to go around to fit every spot, so some of the places that used to have reds in the last version just don't have them anymore. It's not much we could do about that. We just kind of picked the ones that seemed correct. So just like in the last version, the first 2 red stars that you collect expand Mario's moveset, and the first one also unlocks a lot of doors and activates warps. There's a couple doors in the game that open with 2 red stars. I think there's like 1 that requires 3. And then after that, none of them do anything until you have all 13. Because there's a door that requires all 13 to open, and that leads to the final set of levels and basically the end of the game. Used to be a couple ways to cheese that requirement. Those methods do still exist. If you knew what they were, you can try them out again, but they might not work exactly the same way that they used to, so, just be warned. The green stars don't do anything special. They're just kind of bonus content. All of them spawn in after you've collected 120 stars. Most of them are just kind of in areas that didn't really have much going on originally. They're basically just a reference to the green stars from Mario Galaxy 2, but there isn't anything special that happens after you collect them all, it's just for completion. Also, for the record, there are 2 other stars in the game that also spawn in after you have 120 collected, which are not green. It's not really important. I'll talk about them at some point, but just figured I'd mention it. One thing a lot of people have been asking about is the star tracker. I've never used the parallel launcher, but apparently it has the ability to load in files for a built-in tracker that displays all the stars by level and everything, so you can pretty easily see what you're missing. To my knowledge, there is somebody that's working on that. I gave them what info I had to try to help with it, but I couldn't say how well it's coming along. So, in the meantime, I can just recommend the Star Manager program that I used in testing, that I showed in all the older videos. I'll have the link to the tracker file in the description. It doesn't do much. It won't really tell you what stars belong to which levels or anything, but honestly, that was also kind of by design. When going through this, I was tempted to do another sweep after the fact, where I would shuffle all the stars around randomly, so that you couldn't tell where any of them belong to, but that ended up not actually happening. So, what's the case basically here then is, when you clear out a level, most of the time the stars that you get from it are going to all kind of clump together, but once in a while you'll find ones that are just strewn about in random locations, and that's just due to me being sloppy and stuff changing after my first sweep of setting them and that sort of stuff. So the star tracker is mostly useful for finding out which IDs you're missing and then comparing that to a list of all the IDs, which I have, but I do not want to release that yet, because I feel like the game's only been out for a few days. It should have some time to exist without a cheat sheet, but I do want to put it out probably in a couple weeks. You know, the point of the game has always just been exploring and finding weird stuff, but obviously people are still going to want to try to 100% complete it, and it is a monumental effort, so I can understand perfectly why you would want a list to compare to, so I will provide that eventually. For right now, though, I'm just going to show this, so you can see where all the reds and greens are to know how many of those you have. As you can see, the reds are all grouped together because they have to be. Those particular IDs are set up to, you know, recognize them as the red stars for progression. The green stars were going to be all grouped together, but then stuff changed and a bunch of crap got swapped around, and so now they're just kind of spread everywhere. So, yeah, this is the list of where they are. And yes, it is intentional that the Overworld 8 star and the 13 before the set of reds are all left blank. Those IDs are hard-coded to not, like, increment the in-game total at all, so there wasn't really any point to putting stars there. The Overworld 8 slot can still be filled in by random chance if you hit the yellow switch, so have fun with that if you want to mess with it, but it's not a real star. And the last thing I should probably talk about here is the hotfix that happened a day after release. Depending on where or when you downloaded the hack, you might have an out-of-date version. The original February 4th release had a few crashes and other bugs that we didn't manage to catch, and then the next day there were a few different updates that got released within a few hours of each other, and then that was it. There are no plans to update anything again, so any bugs that still exist in the game are probably going to stay there. I don't have a full list of everything that got changed between the two versions in terms of the crashes and that sort of thing, but I do have a list of some star IDs that got swapped around between the two versions, because we decided to make some last-minute changes with those. Mostly removing a couple of the MIPS locations, because as the case was with the last couple releases of the game, you could permanently lock yourself out of those, and Chris basically decided that that was shit, and so we got rid of those and kind of had to fill them in with other stuff. So, if you downloaded the day one release and then updated it, there might be some weirdness with the stars either reappearing or showing as collected if you didn't get them, since the ID switched around. So, if you downloaded the day 1 release and then updated it, there might be some weirdness with certain stars reappearing after you collected them, or appearing to be collected if you didn't, and that's just because of the IDs that got changed. So, I'm going to go over all the ones that changed, and then show exactly how they correlate with each other. This info shouldn't matter to anybody who only ever got the updated version, but I don't think it was ever, properly announced that it got updated in the first place, so if you got it on day 1, this might be relevant to you. So, as I mentioned, Mips the Rabbit got removed from 2 locations, Crimson Hallway and Wingcap by the Rainbow Highway. Both of these would give 2 stars each, once after you have 15 stars, and then again after 50. Both of these were taken out because they would permanently disappear if you got the stars from Mips in the Uncanny Courtyard. The only way to make them obtainable again after doing that is through random chance with the yellow switch, or just editing your save data. And as I mentioned, it was basically decided that this was just lame, and so we scrapped these. In Blazing Bullet Base, there is a room with a Bob-omb that's supposed to give you a star when you talk to him. But if you talk to him with that particular star ID already collected, he won't do anything, not even create a duplicate star. So this one actually managed to slip past me when I was setting all the IDs, and so it was accidentally made into a duplicate of the star at the top of Melting Magma Mound. That star never got changed, but the Bob-omb one did. Because we had to delete 4 MIP stars and only added 1 new one from that Bob-omb, we needed to add 3 more, so these 3 are completely unique to the Day 2 hotfix. They are the Ice House in Snowman's Land Beta, the one behind a fence in Steep Green Summit, and the Red Coin Star in Toxic Ruins, which I was actually kind of showing off in the footage earlier. And lastly, there's 2 Bob-omb Battlefield variants called Ice Cold Warzone and Limitless Lighthouse that have a single star each, and both of these are supposed to warp you to a particular area after you collect them instead of just taking you back out of the painting like normal. The one in Ice Cold Warzone leads to a unique area, and the other one just goes back to another BOB variant. I actually do think that these work correctly in the Day 1 version, but I'll talk more about that whole process in another video. Just to be on the safe side, to make sure these worked correctly, we ended up changing the IDs of them, so they got kind of swapped around with these other ones here. So here's exactly how these switched. On the left side is the Day 1 version, and on the right is the Day 2 hotfix. Remember that no star IDs were actually deleted or added, they just switched. And there's no way to screw yourself out of a 100% file, you just might have to recheck a location if you did the update. So, Course 1 Star 4 used to be Crimson Hallway MIPS number 1, and it became the Snowman's Land Ice House. Course 1 Star 5 used to be the Crimson Hallway MIPS number 2, and became Ice Cold Warzone. Course 2 Star 1 used to be both the Blazing Bullet Factory Bob-omb and Melting Magma Mound top of level, but now it's only the Melting Magma Mound one. Course 10 Star 4 used to be Rainbow Highway MIPS number 1, and it became Limitless Lighthouse. Course 10 Star 5 used to be Rainbow Highway MIPS number 2, and it became the Toxic Ruins Red Coins. Extended Secret 8 Star 1 used to be Ice Cold Warzone, and it became the Blazing Bullet Factory Bob-omb. And Extended Secret 8 Star 5 used to be Limitless Lighthouse, and it became Steep Green Summit behind the fence. Anyway, that was kind of a random assortment of unrelated info, but it was most of the general stuff that I could think of to talk about that wouldn't be better suited for when I go through more specific areas of the game. So I guess next time I'll start covering the new areas, and then we'll go from there.
Just always in his own world. He really quiet for real unless he know you. He's funny as hell though, but if he know you type shit, you know what I'm saying? Like